Hello and welcome to Receive Them, where neurodiversity meets faith. My name is Tyler, and normally this would be the part where I launch into something that I'm learning or something that I want to talk about. But I'm actually not going to be doing a lot of talking today. So I'm here with Craig, and Craig is going to be sharing a bit of his story and his walk and what he's learned, what he's experienced. How you doing, Craig?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing a good, having a good day. So you've got a YouTube channel where you go through the Heidelberg Catechism.
Hmm.
A,
Yes,
a father to his children, right?
yes, that is correct. Yeah, it was mainly because we might get into a bit later, but I've been divorced twice now. We could probably safely say due to my neurodiverse sort of situation, or before I was sort of diagnosed, and as a way to try to connect with at least most of my kids. One is estranged. Um, was to still try to do my best to fulfill that duty as a father to train his children in the Lord. And so um, I saw it as a positive thing to make a podcast episode for the weekly sort of Q&As in the catechism, and then explain and expand on some of the scriptures that are the proof texts.
Very cool.
Yep.
So, like I said in the pre-show, there's not really an itinerary today. We're just going to have a bit of an organic conversation. So, I guess where would you like to start, Craig? Um,
Yeah, I sort of was trying to preempt, as most of us autistic people do. We try to pre-plan what I might say or what I mightn't say. Firstly, I just want to say, like, if I'm probably going to be explaining some of my experiences within church community, both before and after diagnosis. And I just wanted to say from the beginning that my intention is not here to bash the body of believers. I might be talking a lot about some of the negative experiences, but that's more from a hey, I experienced this, and I see shortcomings that may need to be looked at, but not as you know um, a condemnation sort of point of view. And so I just wanted to make that clear for anyone who listens, that I'm not here to try to yeah um, dump on people who are trying to serve the Lord, and are trying to live out the gospel to all near and far. And so I just wanted to clarify that part first.
that is a really good point of emphasis. Honestly, when you get into so many of these conversations, the reality is that we got a lot of negative
Hmm.
in the neurodivergent community. A lot of times, it's our experiences with the church have been pretty toxic, pretty um, unhealthy, and honestly, there's a lot of autistic people that have walked away from the idea of the church because
Hmm.
of what they've seen within those walls, and I
Yes.
hate that. I don't think that necessarily means that the church itself is bad, that the church is malignant, but these are definitely things that people have experienced. We've got to acknowledge that these things that happen
Hmm.
so that the church can grow.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, exactly. So I I saw your episode with the other pastor who had the autistic child, and he was sharing some of his challenges, but the fact that he was trying to find uh, a pastoral office to slot into, but because his child was not well, was autistic, most of these churches weren't equipped to understand how to look after or how to minister to autistic children. I, in a way, I've had my own experiences. Growing up I grew up at the very beginning. I grew up in a family where both my parents are believers. Um, my sister and my brother are also believers. I'm the middle of three. So yeah, the classic black sheep situation. Although my mother would hate me saying that. um, but even way back then. So that we're talking like the 80s, 90s now. Here in Australia, so yeah, I'm not sure what it was like in America, but here in Australia, things like neurodiversity really wasn't something understood. My parents knew something was not quite normal, quote unquote, typical in how I sort of behaved, but they also weren't sure whether to try and get me to get diagnosed with anything because they were concerned that I might just end up being institutionalized. Um,
Mm.
and look, I respect my parents for that because it's a hard choice. It's a hard when you don't want your child to go through something like that. So I ended up struggling. My parents have shown me nothing but love. I've learned what unconditional love is from my parents, and I will always sing their praises um,
Mm.
for that. And I'm thankful for that godly example that they showed me, especially during my teen years, because a lot of my, just generally, a lot of my social troubles came from outside the family or my immediate family. Socially, I was a misfit at school, as you would imagine. Most neurodiverse kids are, especially when they're not diagnosed. I learned how to mask a lot, but even then, that wasn't enough. And I didn't end up becoming born again until I was 19.
Praise
Um,
God.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because but just before that, I was I was getting into the occultic sort of stuff as a way to try to cope with the social um, abuse. Um, so yes, definitely praise God, definitely. Much prayer and Thanksgiving was given by many people when that happened. Um, since then, yeah, it's been interesting because obviously, yeah, becoming a believer, then actually taking church seriously, and not just being seen as that naughty little boy, just always somehow getting in trouble and always somehow saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or just not coping when something goes out of routine. It gets a bit difficult because I was a young adult then, and I ended up actually about joining a mission group. I won't name which one because it's I don't want to name names necessarily, but I didn't do so well there because again, you do mission stuff, and so you're doing a lot of outside sort of practical work and building stuff, and so yeah, with being neurodiverse, you have issues with sensory problems, and so heat is one of my bigger ones. Chaotic noises and bright lights, and being on the eastern side of Australia, in the semi-tropics, you can imagine it was very hot and humid during summer. And quite often I ended up going to a tropical country for any short-term missions. Um, so I end up with a lot of problems like that. And again, because none of this was understood and I didn't understand that I had these neurological challenges, that I clashed with a lot of people, especially my director, and it was a hard sort of 3 years. I'm thankful for some things I did learn, but I can look back now since being diagnosed and look back over those days and go, oh, well, that explains everything now. Like that explains why I just didn't sort of fit in quite so well. But after that, came back, joined a local church that my parents were going to at that time. And yeah, I still trying to deal with a lot of the fallout of trying to understand myself and all the social abuse. I think I used the word and I won't use it lightly, but I was severely bullied.
Mm.
I'll say to the point where I'm the same age as the 1999 Columbine boys were, and let's just say I was heading down the very same track they were in due to the school issues I was having.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah. Oh, obviously that was before I was born again. So, but yeah, I had those sort of ideations and everything else. Yeah. And so I sort of took to just writing poetry and stuff like that. I don't do it so much now, but it was a way to try to cope. And I remember finding someone else around a similar age, and looking back now, yeah, the fact that it was a female probably wasn't the wisest thing. There wasn't anything romantic, but just she had her own sort of traumatic upbringing, and I sort of found someone who sort of shared in that trauma, and then I shared some of my struggles through poetry, sort of thing, just shared it with it. Nothing more than just, hey, I want someone to relate to me. I want someone to understand that this is what's going on. And she did, but unfortunately, it also then tipped her over the edge, because it sort of triggered her emotional state. And then, of course, the pastor of that time, who was working very hard with her, came over, and to where I was still living with my parents. I was still, like a young adult, still home alone at that time because my parents were out, and he just sort of tore into me because all the work that he'd been doing with this other girl, a young lady, he basically said I'd basically ruined everything, because she had sort of slipped back into whatever struggle she was having, but never once actually took note. Hang on, if I wrote about that trauma, then whilst it may have triggered something from her past, I'm going through that now. I'm experiencing it, and that never once came into any of the conversations we had with him, or I had with him. And let's just say I subsequently found another church. That was my choice. Because again, I just didn't feel supported. And again, yeah, you kind of try to you try to make it work. You try to fit in. You try to just copy the patterns that you see everybody else do. And it works for a while, then all of a sudden it doesn't. Because as you would imagine, like when you're masking, you're draining that mental energy and that capacity to do something. All of a sudden it just drops and it goes. Yeah. A good way to explain it is like someone trying to fake an accent, and all of a sudden you revert back to your normal accent. Yeah. Being an Australian, be like if I was trying to put on like a southern accent from the US, and all of a sudden I go back to using the Australian accents. It's just you can't just keep it up. You go back to what's normal, and then of course, you get labeled weird, because again, we're talking like early 2000s now, and still I think Asperger's was the term that was used, but again, you weren't sort of noticed unless you were like Rain Man, like Dustin Hoffman, the Rain Man was, and so you were just the weirdo. You were just the guy who just
I was like right on the cusp of that myself. I was born in '98, so I was diagnosed I think 2006.
All right. Yep.
So I was right in that window there where that was the terminology was Asperger's and high functioning and low functioning and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah. So so that was basically what I was going through. And again, I tried working as well. And work was horrible. Construction work and everything else. It was hard, and that sort of took a toll too. Because I'm going to jump a bit of a timeline here to my second marriage. My first one was to an unbeliever. She claimed to be a believer, but then wasn't, and left me. So I got one son from that marriage, and he's estranged at the moment, but Lord willing, I'll get in contact with him at some point in his life. But remarried to a Christian lady and tried to have a lot of a normal relationship. And again, still at this point undiagnosed. Due to everything that's been going on, she knew I had depression issues. She knew I had anxiety issues, but just knowing about it, but then knowing how to deal with someone like that, and then expecting a normal response from a husband and to provide, or a normal husband to act in a certain way as per the yeah, the typical standard that people expect, especially here in the West, it was hard because then yeah, she was expecting something, and I was trying to get there and just couldn't get there, and it caused issues. And over time, and then having children later, and then that created the more sensory issues as well. I was having numerous meltdowns before by the end of it. We ended up being married about 10 years, and I was by the end of it having some epic meltdowns. And I didn't know what they were. I didn't know why, because I'm not a naturally angry person. And all of a sudden, I just had these anger outbursts, and I thought, "What is this?" You know, and many tears, many prayers. God, what is this? What is this? And all the church was saying was that Craig has an anger issue. Uh, Craig has a lack of faith issue. Because he's not trusting, because yeah, he's got a fear of man, because he's struggling to come to church, yeah, and all that sort of thing. And that was the response I was getting, and I'm sitting there going, no, 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 something more than it's not that. There's something's not quite right here. And I tried different other counseling. I tried secular counseling. I tried church counseling, and it only got so far because when you have any sort of psychiatric sort of care, the way a neurodiverse mind operates is obviously way different to a neurotypical mind. And so therefore the type of psychology or way of trying to help the brain, it has to be completely different. And so I went to all these biblical counsels, and then people just kept seeing, all they kept seeing was Craig gave up. I was like, well, no, it's because I didn't feel heard. I wasn't understood. Like things like anxiety, they would often give you, the norm, and well and good, all those good sort of verses, do not fear, tomorrow, trust in God, put God's kingdom first, and which is completely fine. And I completely agree with that, obviously. But I knew that there was something else that was triggering that anxiety, something else that was triggering that depressive sort of mood swing. And it wasn't just a simple behavioral thing. It wasn't just simply, I didn't trust God. And I couldn't explain it, and I couldn't understand it. Why there was just times and places I just couldn't go somewhere. I just couldn't do something. I made plans, and suddenly I just couldn't go, or had to, couldn't wear certain things, or whatever it was, nothing more embarrassing than getting the whole whole family ready for church. And that was, often traumatic. Because of the stress of doing that. Then you stand outside the church building, you're already 5 minutes late, and you just can't walk in because you're late, and you know that your family gets sat down the front. Because again, I'm sort of talking about a time when it was the COVID period, and they made everyone have set seating at church. And unfortunately, my family was stuck in the front, and I didn't cope with that, because for me, I need to be at the back so I can see everything, so I can process everything. And just all that together, and that pathological demand avoidance that comes with being neurodiverse, it's just, I couldn't do it. And then you got to walk back with your family in shame back to the car, and try to explain to the kids Dad wasn't coping. And that's all these kids saw, was Dad wasn't coping. And then that's all, all the elders and the pastor saw was, this man isn't coping. He's obviously got anger issues, he's got fear issues, maybe he's got unresolved sin issues. And that was sort of like the approach that was sort of given for the most part. It wasn't actually until that second marriage failed, and she moved to Perth, because that's where her family is, and took the kids with. Now, originally, it wasn't supposed to be a permanent separation, but long story, the initial sort of time period we had passed, and I wasn't obviously any better, but I was in line to get more sort of psychiatric assessments, because I knew something was up. 6 months later, I was finally diagnosed with level 2 autism, ADHD, and bipolar. So, a triple whammy right there. And it all plays off it themselves. And that just opened up doors that just makes so much sense. And so the challenge that I have now, sorry.
I was going to say that brings an interesting paradigm here. Just for the viewer, because I've said it before that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Because I
Exactly.
was
Yep.
diagnosed almost as soon as was humanly possible.
Hmm.
Is my parents basically knew when I was 2 years old that I was probably neurologically atypical.
Hmm.
And so they parented me like I was neurologically atypical until the school recommended me to be diagnosed when I was 6.
Hmm.
So I don't know a time before the tism. I don't know a time before the word autism.
Yep.
I was diagnosed at 6 with autism and OCD and auditory processing disorder. But what Craig is describing is that he went a very long time before having that explanation for the things that he was experiencing, the things that he was feeling, and and a lot of people had very well intentioned things that were wrong about what was going on in his head, what was going on in his way of processing the world around him, and that hurts. And I'm
Mm.
gonna be honest that being diagnosed later on in life tends to bring a lot of additional baggage because
Yeah,
you've
definitely.
gone that long without knowing the why behind
Mhm.
anything. That it's
Yeah.
very easy to get in that mindset of thinking I'm wrong. I'm this, I'm that, I'm damaged.
Mhm.
Why can't I just be like everyone else? And that is a struggle that tends to be more amplified with the late term diagnosis than somebody with a story like mine who got diagnosed almost right out the gate.
Mm, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the why. Yeah, the classic yeah, autistic question. Why? Why is this happening? Why am I doing this? Help me understand this. And yeah, and so there was that constant struggle because you had this um, mindset that you had to fit the generalized norm for how things were done, be it how you acted in church, how you operated as a father and a husband. Um, and yeah, and that's in the end, that's also why I'm now divorced again, is because when I explained to her that it was a permanent disability disorder, and it wasn't going to go away, and that there was no guarantee I'd never, ever, ever, ever have a meltdown again, even though I could learn how to try to manage it through behavioral sort of, yeah, and planning and all that sort of stuff, yeah, mitigation sort of therapies and techniques. Long story short, and again, I'm not trying to bash my second wife here, but she didn't want to continue in a spousal role with that. Now, um, and so she gave me papers. And it's a challenge now because even my youngest child, like she's 9, no 7 now. Sorry, she my youngest one, she's 7 now, but she was only like 4, just about 5 when all this sort of really really hit the fan. Um, and so she doesn't have much memory of what life was like when we were all together as a family. And so even now, I'm having to talk with her about the fact that, yeah, dad has a medical condition. It won't go away, but it does affect dad's life. And unfortunately, dad doesn't handle certain things very well. And unfortunately, that also means the noises and just the life of having lots of children around. And it's hard to, as a father, to try to explain to her, dad loves you very much, but dad can't cope having children around him for long periods of time. Just again, I can't process that noise and that chaos and that stress very well for a long period of time without either burning out or having that meltdown or shutdown. And that's a hard place for me to be. And I'm trying to work through that. That's something I've been working through with God, is trying to understand, all right, these are the expectations of a husband, or in my case now, just a father. Um, and I know everyone will say, oh, well, this is the expectation we're looking for. But then you go, okay, but hang on, but I don't sort of fit that norm. Therefore, how now do I approach this role as a father, knowing I can't just always pick up my kids and go to the beach? I can't just pick them all up and go to a sports game. I'd love to. I'd love to take my kids to a sports game. I'd love to take my kids to the beach all by myself. But yeah, my care and support level means that I need a support worker part of the time when I go outside the house. Um, Over here in Australia, we have a government funded sort of support network where you can find things like an occupational therapist and all that sort of stuff, but and psychology and support work, and the government funds all that. So whilst I'm thankful for that, politics aside, um, yeah, it's that challenge now, and so the challenge I'm now facing too is I don't want to end up becoming, I forget the term now, is it a lone wolf Christian? Because I'm very obviously very sincere in my faith. One of the things I love doing is I love growing. I love learning theology. I love understanding it because I want to know my Creator. I want to know who He is, and I want to know
Amen.
how best I can live for Him. And I want to know. And I've talked to my mum about this. I said, Mum, the parable of the master went away and gave his three servants, the different talents, the five, the three, and the one. I said, look, there's a good chance I'm the guy who got the one talent. I said, so at the very least, I want to learn from God. What does it mean to invest it so God gets the interest? At the very least, what does that look like? What does that? And I'm not saying that that's all I want to stay with, but at the very least, I don't want to stand before God and go, well, yeah, look, I had an option, but I just, spent, whatever, and buried it. So my challenge now in my walk with God now is, God, you have ordained I would have these, this trifecta, and you know how it affects me, even more than I still know how it affects me, and I know that it has a reason and a purpose for it. I just don't fully understand. Maybe it is to raise awareness. Maybe it is to do podcast type things to help, teach. But through a podcast option, I mean, one of a million podcasts, but still, you never know. Or maybe it is just to raise my children's, because look, that's the other challenge I'm looking at now is my four children I have for my second one. They're all like me. They're all, you can tell straight away they have the same struggle or similar struggles and mannerisms and challenges that I do, and they just haven't been officially diagnosed yet. They're in the system waiting for that, but they're not there, so they don't have the support. So everything I'm learning, I'm now trying to help them through. So everything I learned for emotional regulation and stuff like that, I'm trying to help them so that it benefits them, because I don't want them growing up not knowing what to do or not knowing how to cope in a situation at all. And I don't know, maybe that's it, and maybe I'm just that small cog in God's grand scheme, and it's my kids that He's going to take far and wide. And if that's the case, God be praised, and if not, well, God be praised for whatever plan He's got. But just circling back, my challenge now is, because I have moved from one side of the country to the other, whilst I'm still attending a church within the same denomination, I'm not a local member anymore. I'm what they call a national member. So I'm still recognized as a member of, through that denomination, but I'm limited in some things. So like I don't get the vote, and I think things like church discipline may not be quite so always there. So, or always so pushed, because I'm not a local member, which I thought was a bit odd now that I found out that second one. But what I've been doing is I've been trying to go to church. At least one of the elders and one of the deacons at least know that I have my disposition, and there was a time there where they had like a side room for me to attend, so I could go in there. I could, I could turn the lights off, or I could turn the air conditioner on, or I could sort of help with the sensory sort of overload. But summers over here are like that in Arizona, where it gets to like, I would say 45 degrees. It's like 110 or something like that. Yeah, and I don't cope with the heat, so I just couldn't attend it because it was just too hard, just even walking to the car and not having a sensory sort of overwhelm. And I ended up viewing the online stream that the church does, and unfortunately that's where I've sort of stayed, because again, I can make my room dark, I can turn the fan on, I can do whatever it is and not feel judged, but I am aware that I need to get in contact again with the elders and say, hey, look, I still want to be part of this local church, not just a nationally recognized member. I want to be a local member. I may be limited in how much I do. I may be limited in how much I can attend in men's groups and men's ministries and stuff, and maybe even what I can do to help out with a ministry. But I want to be connected, and that's, I think, the challenge is because last I heard is I think the room I was using was getting repurposed a few times, and so that meant, and one of it being it was going to be used for young mums who are still feeding their bubs, so I couldn't really be in the room. Yeah. Well, mums are feeding, but it's just no.
No, but we'd probably be too autistic to know why that's awkward.
Oh, I've learned. Yeah, I mean, I'll just go, hey, that's amazing, wonderful, praise God, but just the fact that I've learned that people would see that. I've learned that pattern. But yeah, so that's the challenge. That's one of the challenges I'm facing now, is that I need to try to get back in contact with my local church and say, look, I do want to keep coming back. I do want to be as involved as I can be, but yeah, I'm severely limited in how I can handle certain situations. Can we talk about what we can do, or if I do just keep watching online, how else can I get connected? Because I am part of a home group, and I do attend as much as I can, because again, it's a smaller group and it's at someone's house, so it's a bit more, bit less sort of sensory, overloading. But again, to become a local member, basically, I need more than just one elder that know me and vouch for me, because the biblical rule of having 2 or 3 witnesses. So I need to have more than just one person vouch for me. But that also then means I need to keep attending, where the elders can see me. So this is the challenge I'm facing now, and I'm conscious of that. But then I'm also struggling with the when do I reach out? Do I just reach out? Because I know that the elder who I talk with, he's got his own kids and he's got his own studies and everything else, and it's like, do I just reach out and wait for him to get back, or is there a time I have to wait for it? And so I have to deal with those, and I think that because I'm not a local member, I'm not high on the church's radar at the moment. I'm just sort of like a visitor that floats in, floats out. We have a term here for work called FIFO, fly in, fly out, for those who work in the mines. And so it's like, it's almost like I'm a FIFO member. I turn up and I don't turn up. And I think that's because of that, I sort of get missed even when I do turn up. The only people who sort of will relate to me then are my kids. They'll come and morph me, and maybe one or two of the elders, or some of the other people who are more inclined to go talk to the new people. But I just struggle there, because again, I want to meet with people and I want to connect with the fellowship of believers and stuff, but just handling that sensory noise, and then always have to have earplugs in or glasses on. You don't look very friendly when you're wearing headphones, earplugs, or sunglasses, and inside you just don't look approachable. And it's not even the leadership I'm talking about here, but I just don't. But there's a general sort of non-understanding, I think, within just the church in general, of how do I approach someone who has clear sort of differences in how that they sort of relate to the world around them. And because autism doesn't have a look, there is no, like Down syndrome. Down syndrome has a look, and other disabilities have a look about them. It's hard for people to look at people like you and I and immediately go, oh, they got a disorder or disability. I need to go and make sure that they're doing okay. unless I wear it on my shirt, I am ADHD. Help me. Yeah, and even then, there's no guarantee that they would know how to address that. So it's one of those scenarios where I think the church has a lot of growing to do in a lot of areas. And again, I'm not bashing the church. It's just a natural thing of saying, hey, we got to keep growing. All right. Yep. We got to keep growing. We got to keep expanding our knowledge of how to love and as this podcast says, to receive them, in, to be as active as they can, to be as a part of our community as they can. And you've lost power, so we're going wait.
A few minutes later.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back. Excellent.
Sorry about that.
That's right. I sort of finished my train of thought. Yeah, autistic joke there. And and just waited, so it's good.
Okay, so just trying to kind of ease back into where we were. We were talking on the seeming lack of accommodations in the church setting a lot of times, and that's something that I kind of relate to a bit, because while I don't necessarily have issues with like the temperature and some of that, sound is definitely a thing. Sound is definitely an issue that I've had. I actually also wear earplugs to church a lot of times just to kind of take the edge off of everything. But
Yep.
what I cannot seem to wrap my head around is why in America it is so difficult to just turn the volume down. Like,
Yeah.
and part of that is a preference thing that I probably gotta give grace on. I'll be honest, I can be a little salty on that, but at the same time, in
Yeah.
America, we have churches everywhere that we almost have a McDonald's fast food menu full of churches. They're everywhere. There's hundreds of churches in my town, and if you don't like what's over here, you go over there. But they're
Yep.
all doing a lot of the same things, and you've got these recurring problems. And so you go church to church to church, and they all quote unquote do church differently, and yet the same people are feeling pushed to the side because of the things that we're not quite so willing to budge on. And that's frustrating, that's saddening, but that's where a lot of autistic people are, is that we've been kind of pushed to the side by how X wants to do things. And we want to connect with people, we want to be a part of this, we want discipleship. We're not sitting back saying I don't want to be discipled necessarily. We want this. We just can't hack it. We just can't quite enter into your world, so to speak. And maybe there's a version of this where we can each take a half step out of our world and kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah, that is the I think the challenge that we have is, I mean, I've even contemplated recently, the concept of, I mean, again, we are a victim of our disorders, but I don't want to have a victim mentality about it as well. If make that distinction. And I've often wondered, is, based upon the knowledge we have, is it wrong or is it unbiblical to have a church or churches in areas that are set up for the neurodiverse? Not that you have to be neurodiverse to go there, but the key ministry of that church is to accommodate neuro. And I don't know how that will work, because again, like, as you did say, and honest, it was rightfully said at the beginning, if you met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. My autism doesn't affect me the same way that the autism affects you. As you stated, I have heat sensories, you don't. So,
but there's an advocate in my town that she's kind of talked about this before, that when something is accessible, what that essentially means is it's flexible. And so if we understand that there's a potential for having sensory issues, accessible church might look more like us having some kind of scaffolding in place where we know that we can be flexible on this, and this, depending on the needs that would present themselves.
Okay.
But that's
Yeah.
often easier said than done, not just in the church, but just in public. And this is something that we're working through in every sphere of society right now, is where are the autistic people going to fit, is how do we navigate these challenges, how do we navigate a lot of this. You were talking about not being diagnosed in the 80s and 90s because there's that possibility of being sent away. And what we have nowadays is it's very public, it's very upfront, it's very in your face. It's on TikTok, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And, autism is very much a part of the conversation now than it ever was.
But do you find it's still in the virtue signaling stage? Like everyone wants to talk about, like everyone wants to say, yes, we are aware autism exists, until they actually have to deal with an autistic person.
Unfortunately, I wish I could say no, but where we are is that has a tendency to be what happens, is that it does turn into that virtue signaling, that inauthentic starting down that road because of having that appearance, or maybe there is a concern until that concern brushes up against another thing.
Yep.
That it gets complicated. Honestly, people make things complicated, even not just autistic people. People complicate things.
Yep.
It's just that autistic
sorry,
people.
I am just going to interrupt. Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. Neighborhood dogs are going off, so I'm just saying I am a little distracted. Sorry, noise wise.
I'm sorry,
because it's coming to my microphone so I can hear it. Sorry. Yeah, but please continue. But I'm just giving you a heads up that my sensory processing is getting assaulted at the moment by the neighborhood dogs.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
But where was I?
Sorry, I do apologize.
People complicate things.
Yeah.
People make things complicated. It's just that autistic people, we make things uniquely complicated.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of hard, but it's still hard.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember telling my mum that, because after I got diagnosed, she was feeling, she must have felt a bit guilty of the fact that she didn't get me diagnosed earlier in life. And I said to her, I said, well, actually, Mum, it was going to be hard no matter which way you went. It was, I was going to experience hardship. It was going to be hard because I was institutionalized, which would be hard on you in one way. Then be hard not being institutionalized, but having to deal with the woes of trying to fit into a societal norm. And then you have to feel the door, help with the see me go through all that trauma. So, and I said to us, look, you chose what you believe before God was the best option for me. I said, I don't blame you for that. Because it was hard. It was going to be hard either way. And it was a case of choose your hard. It doesn't make it any less hard just because you didn't feel like it worked out that way. Again, not sure exactly where I was going to go with that, but maybe it was just to agree with you there. It's just that, mirroring sort of experience, to agree with you. But yay. But look, I think that look, there's a lot of growth to go. There's a lot of understanding to go, because I think I even just saw an article. I need to read into it a lot more, but apparently they're sort of indicating that there might even now be 4 different types of autism, which may explain why there is such a vast pinwheel spectrum of people.
Like recent data on that?
It's recent to me. I don't know how recent the article is. Like I said, I have to go read it. I sent myself the link to go back and read it. I only just saw it like the other day. So I don't know. Maybe you've seen or heard something about it.
Well, I know there's a Harvard study that came out that's pretty earth-shattering from what I've heard that I need to dig into. I don't know anything about it though. Okay. I'm not sure if that's what's what you're referring to or not. I can't say a 4 different subtypes rings any bells for me.
Okay.
I was only aware of the level 1, level 2, level 3.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to clarify for those who aren't aware, they don't use the high function, low function anymore. They categorize 1, 2, and 3 based upon support needs. Doesn't make you any less autistic. It's just that the way autism affects you leads to you needing different levels of support. So obviously, yeah, someone who's level 3 needs pretty much 24-hour care. I'm a level 2, so I need supports, but I don't need it 24/7. And I
I'm
forget
a 1.
You're a 1. Yeah, so
I'm
you
a
have
1.
struggles. You have struggles, but but your support needs. I mean, you need supports, but just not to the same extent that I might need them. So, but
Right,
again,
it's a bit of a
yeah,
smaller area.
yeah.
One of the big
But
things
again,
for
doesn't
me
make you
is
it doesn't make you any less autistic than I am.
right.
So,
So
yeah.
I'm generally pretty able to deal until I get in that spot, and then it's like all the safeties are off basically.
Mm.
One example is that I'm 26 and don't have a driver's license. That is not something I've been able to figure out yet. It really kind of boils down to my inability to multitask, to respond quickly enough, and some of those kinds of things. So I can't drive at 26, and here in the America, we feel a certain type of way about that because we have a certain cultural association with driving. This is independence, this is freedom, this is maturity, and I can't do that.
Yep.
And it's very easy for me to turn that into a value issue.
Mm.
That because I'm not driving, I'm less of a man, essentially.
Yep.
And that's just me as a level 1. That is considerably lower in that frame of needs, and so you can probably extrapolate that out person to person and find that this is all over. This is something that we're all working through in different ways, different manifestations, differing intensities of what does this mean. And I personally find a lot of comfort in Ecclesiastes 7:13. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked. And the thing that I had to kind of reconcile in my mind at one point was that there's times where God in his sovereignty makes a thing from my perspective to be crooked. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that God has made crooked and it's okay. And I think for me, there are times where autism is that thing made crooked, where things are made uniquely hard, uniquely difficult. And there is a sense in which walking with God, it's okay. That the autism isn't a defect. It doesn't negate that I'm made in his image. It doesn't negate that I'm his child. It doesn't negate any of this because I was bought with the same blood as just about anybody else in the church.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
All it means is that there's a different struggle, but it's the same God that we walk with.
Mm.
There's that same peace. There's that same contentment to be found. There's that same joy found in the person of Christ.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I find myself going back to a few times is, Paul, when he was talking about, the thorn in the flesh, is, God, take this from me, take it from me. Yeah. And God's response was, my grace is sufficient. And I'll admit, some days I totally forget about God's grace, and I do complain, and I do go, God, take it from me. But again, he always comes back and says, no, trust in me. Yeah. I don't understand sometimes because I don't know how it is for you, but when things are vague or uncertain, I do struggle with that in processing what's going on, especially also because I'm very analytical and I need to sort of understand all the connecting things. It's like having a big hole in your fly screen. You think, why are these mozzies coming through? How do I stop them? It's just, and you're going, why is there this hole? And I don't understand this hole, but I don't know how to fix it either. But it's those times when I do have to trust. All right, God, you have promised that you will always remain faithful, even when I lack the faith, even when I act outside my own faith. Yeah. And the other prayer is, God, I believe, but help me in my unbelief. Because there's sometimes I just go, God, this is just too hard. I don't understand this. Why did you allow this to happen before I was diagnosed? Why did you allow my second marriage to dissolve before I got diagnosed, and now that I was diagnosed, why was it completely cut off after that? And ended. And praise God, I have connection with my 4 kids, and I can co-parent without any problems with my ex-wife, even to the point where we actually do attend the same church. I mean, albeit I am a virtual member, but for the kids' sake, glory to God, for the kids' sake, that their mum and I are theologically on the same sort of page, and we can co-parent both theologically and in world and life view towards the same sort of ends, despite the fact that the marriage is over. So I do give thanks to God for that, but and I suppose those are just some of the small things I have to be thankful for. But yeah, I think a lot of things that need to happen too, and this is from my end, this is from my own subjective experience here I'm talking from, is to, because I do want to try and go back to church in person. And even if I don't get to connect with everyone, at least I know I was there. And I've got to try and phrase this without making it sound like it sounds wrong in my head, but seen. And I'm not trying to say, hey, look at me. And not like the Pharisee on the on the corner scene, but just like, if the church body is supposed to be supportive of everybody in the church body, then if they don't know I exist, then they don't know that I need the help, unless I have to somehow reach out, which is not always easy for us neurodiverse of people to reach out, even though we know that we need to reach out. And so I need to at least have some sort of exposure, and I'm aware of that, and the challenges that come with that. So I need to reconnect with the elder that I am do a connection with, and say, hey, look, what can we do again? Things have changed since I was last able to attend. How can we address this? And I don't think it's ever going to be a one method fits every church, obviously, because everybody's unique. Everybody has their own individual flavors of things, and that's just in general. That's not even talking about the neurodiverse side of things. But I think I think the big thing here is trying to have some dialogue, try to have some discussion and some communication with the elders and the deacons and the pastoral carers in your church. And if they're not willing, and it's sad to be, but if they're not willing to help with that, then maybe then hey, look, thank you, but maybe I do need to find another body, another fellowship somewhere. And that's always a hard choice. When do you leave? When don't you leave? Do you stay to try to say, hey, look, can we improve on something or not? But these are the questions I still ask myself. These are the questions I still wrestle with. Like if my current church, which I love, and I love the people there, and I do my best to support them even from afar, and do to love one another even from afar. But if I'm going to end up being accidentally pushed to the side just by a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding, a lack of that sort of cohesiveness, then maybe I might have to look for somewhere else, which again is a challenge all in itself, because then I have to deal with the fact I don't know anybody, and there's no pattern, there's no routine, and there's no this and no that, and no one at another church who would know who I am. And so again, that opens up another sort of can of problems. But sorry, brain's gone blank because where am I going with all this? But at the very least, I think you got to have the discussion. You got to talk to people. Maybe it's not something that the diaconate actually does. Maybe you need to tell them, hey, there's a need and someone else in the church can help minister with that. Like if you know that you have struggles and get overwhelmed, like the sound is too loud, and even if your earplugs, there's just too much, information happening and your brain can't process it and it's too much, that someone else can, brother or sister, obviously, brother, sister in the church, can sit with you and become like that carer for that period, and or a group of them can. And so when they see you, there's that encouragement within the body at large, and not even just dumping everything on the leadership. I think it has to start there, but I'm sort of thinking back in Acts where they had the apostles were like, well, hang on, we can't try and deal with the widows. We need to find other men to do that and run that service to the widows, because the apostles had another role. And so they're picking up the seven godly men, including Stephen, to do that other role. So maybe that's what it is you need to have like a ministry of sorts within the church to that's overseen by an elder, but not necessarily run by the elders or dictated by the elders, but at least it's overseen and checked on by the elders to make sure that people who have been identified as neurodiverse have someone, or have people, a group of people who will check in on them regularly, who will sit with them, who will sit around them and be alert that, hang on, they don't look like they're coping right now. I'll just help them go outside and take a regulation break so they can sort of de-escalate that stress within them, because it's a stress, and it's not just oh no, I choose to be, and that stress is not, again, for those who listen and don't understand, that stress that we have is not a, oh no, I'm not trusting, oh no, I'm fearful, as most people don't understand stress, and I'm not giving God, the faith I need to have. It's because our brains are constantly on red alert. We're looking for, our brains is constantly on danger, and that just more automatically raises those stress levels, which is why we're quick to the overwhelm, we're quick to the burnout, and we're quick to the meltdowns. And maybe that's what it is as well. Like, that's the other option, is instead of expecting, and again, I could be talking from an Australian point of view here, in those experiences where it always has to be the church eldership that has to facilitate, has to run those sort of supports. But it could be something that could be done by anybody in the church who just says, hey, we know that you have this neurodiverse condition. We know that it will affect you in a certain way. Let me help you shoulder this burden, because we want to see you come to church. We want to see you worship with us. We want to have you with us, but we also know that there's a challenge for you to do that. And that's something that may need to happen as well. But again, that's not going to happen unless you first have to speak up. And I think, and that's the risk you got to take as a neurodiverse person who needs those supports in the church, is you do have to speak up. You do have to talk to somebody, and it starts there. And I think it's...
Darn it.
Yeah. It's
no, not talking to people.
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to find somebody somewhere at least. Or even someone to come with you and advocate. Well, here's the other thing: find someone who's willing to do that, and go with them, and they can advocate for you. That's the other thing too. Is the advocacy. So just the general advocacy of other people in church. So, because that is something that we're supposed to do with one another. So, to loving one another is to see a need and to either respond to that need, either directly or find someone who can do it if you yourself can't. That's part of doing life together. But again, if you've done any sort of level of psychology or behavioral sort of economics, you know that there are things like known knowns, unknown knowns, and you don't know, but then you don't know that you know. Then there's the old you don't know that you don't know. And if a lot of people aren't seen or aren't aware of a need, then they're not going to be on the lookout for it either. So if there's no encouragement for someone, no encouragement in general for people to keep hearing, hey, look, we have some neurodiverse people, and I forget where I heard the statistic, but or the person who said, it might have even been the episode you had with the pastor, that if 1 in 33 people are autistic and the average church is about 75 people, then or neurodiverse, then at least statistically two in your church would be dealing with neurodiverse situations, which would then mean that it's good for a general awareness, and also, hey, these are general things you can do. Like I mentioned before, we know that you get overwhelmed. Let me help you move outside so that you can de-escalate that stress you're going through, because we don't want you to have that meltdown. Or it could be, if you're a parent of a neurodiverse child, because as not everyone knows, it is hereditary, that there is that genetic link between parent and child. And so, there's a chances are that the parent also is dealing with neurodiverse thing. And like in my case, I couldn't cope with my kids with just being kids. And so if my kids are starting to feel a bit rowdy, I'm not coping. So then I need someone to help me help my kids. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. And I can't give like a one event fits everything sort of anecdote, silver bullet, but what does it look like? And you will have to tailor that, and it will have to be subjective to that person, to that family, to that mum, to that dad, to the husband, to the wife. But I think that's a very key thing that needs to come to the forefront, at least for people like you and I in our community, within the church. And it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen overnight. But unfortunately, the conversation has to start somewhere, and usually it's going to come from self-advocating to somebody who can then either advocate on behalf of us, or can at least direct us to a better person to self-advocate to. And we work from there, and we just keep asking God for that guidance and that grace. And in the meantime, we just, we do the best we can, that one talent. If it is indeed the one talent that we've been given, but we find a way to invest that so God gets the interest, instead of burying what he has given us in the ground and doing nothing and just hiding from the world. Because I can say being a hermit is a little bit enticing sometimes, to be a hermit. Just I don't want to go outside. I don't want to do anything.
I know I've made jokes about starting a monastery.
No, I've I make the joke. My housing situation is I'm renting a room from a family. So it's a large house, but I'm renting sort of not so much a granny flat type of situation, but it's just I'm in one of the back bedrooms, and there's a small kitchen down there. So and I make the joke whenever the family see me, and they go, and I say hi, and I do something. I go, yes, I'm going back to my cave now.
See, my monastery would have a train in it.
So I'm not a train autistic person. I'm not. So when people talk about the trains, I scratch my head and go, I don't see the appeal. But I will collect other things, be interested in other things, obviously.
See, my main hyperfixations are theology, trains, Herman Melville, believe it or not, like the writer of Moby Dick.
Oh, right, yep.
That's an odd one, but trains, like Thomas the Tank Engine was a big part of my childhood. And so I own the autism train memes, because that's kind of me.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I'll make jokes.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'll make jokes about the trained autism. That's just because I know that there's that connection there. But I mean, again, for me, I mean, theology obviously being one, and then theology applied then to all areas of life. How does God's law require us to live as an individual, the family, the church structure, and then society as a large. That's an interest for me. I do have a law degree, but I can't do anything with it yet, at least not until I do maybe something on an academic level. So applying law or legal framework is for me is something that's a key interest for me. But otherwise, just for fun, there's like, hey, I'm an anime person. I love certain types of music, especially I stim with music. So it has like a bass. So anything that's bass wise, I quite like, or anything that has like that sort of darker sort of sound. I say darker sound, just to so there's a lot of bass, or it's like an off key. like a minor key sort of thing. That's my sort of stimming thing. One of them, one of many. Yeah,
See,
so
I
I've
stem through the metrical psalms. That's kind of one of
did.
my things is the psalms in meter. It's just
Oh,
that
okay.
rhythm to it.
I don't think I've been exposed to enough of that. To be honest, I mean, I'm not obviously not against the Psalms. Obviously, the Psalms are great. Um, but my sort of exposure to the Psalms has been just people. What's the word I'm looking for? Where they sort of put their own music to it. Like they'll sing it as it is in scripture, but they put their own style of music to it. So, the Sons of Korah is a Australian group that I can think of,
Gotcha.
and so that's pretty much my sort of really only exposure to anything. So anything done classically,
Mm.
or have heard a Gregorian version of Psalm 1, 2, 3, and 4 put together. That was pretty cool.
And
Because
see, the old
again,
Scots
yeah.
kind of in the middle of that Gregorian and something more modern, probably. Around
Mm.
1650, this the edition that I tend to use. There were some in the 1500s though. Um, but what they did is they took all 150 psalms and put them in the same meter. So
Oh,
there's the
okay.
same number of syllables on each line.
Yep.
And what that does is, as long as a song is in common meter, you could sing it to that tune. So you
Oh,
could
nice.
take
Okay.
any of these in the book, and you could
Hmm.
actually do it to Amazing Grace. You could do it to the theme from Green Acres.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a lot of things you could do with it, but kind of the traditional way that they would do it is there's a certain tune that they do, and there's a certain rhythm to it. And I just the flow of it just really appeals to me, and so I tend to
Okay.
skim through the Psalter essentially.
Nice. That's probably actually better than than what I still. Yeah. Um, but but no, I mean, if you got any other, I don't know, if you got an audio link, you can send that to me after the show, definitely. Yeah, so I can sort
Yeah.
of hear it. Or check it out a bit more because no, I think the best I found was like someone did a lo-fi beat behind Genesis or something like that. read the Genesis
Oh,
account
I'm
with
kicking
lo-fi.
around the idea of trying something like that actually.
Yeah,
But we're getting off topic, and it's
very
but
easy.
it's very easy to do when you got two attention deficit people in the same room.
Yeah,
But as we try to land the plane,
rabbits everywhere.
um, as we try to land the plane, Craig, the question to end all questions: what is the gospel?
Well, the gospel, yes, the best news you're ever going to hear. The gospel is coming across God's law to explain to us that there is a perfect God, there is a perfect standard, and we do not meet that by ourselves, and we never will meet that by ourselves. But by God's grace, He has provided the way through Himself, through the cross, and Jesus dying and defeating death on our behalf, and that we come to that realization that we are morally bankrupt, we have nothing good in ourselves, and that all goodness and righteousness is in Christ, and that we ask His forgiveness, and we seek to then live for Him, and knowing that He's not just going to leave us there, He's going to keep perfecting us, He's going to keep making us more like Him, and He is going to make all things new. And we look forward to that glorious restoration at the end.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been Receive Them. It has been a very imperfect recording session, so we're not professionals. There's going to be flaws and finicky things in here. I lost the internet for a minute or two. But thanks for sticking with us. This has been Receive Them. If you want to hit that subscribe button down at the bottom, get notified when we do more stuff like this. I'm hoping to, Lord willing, do more interviews like this with some other autistic Christians. But yeah, this is what we do.